Welcome back to Bread and Butter, everybody. We are the Hearthstone podcast where we serve up the basics for you to improve your Hearthstone game. This week we have the most infamous guest we've had so far.
That
Daniel
can't be
Stormraige
true.
Sheldon. Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't think I am either famous nor infamous, other than my love of the movie Cats, at which point maybe a little bit. But apart from that, I think I'm just a pretty average little boy.
I think that notorious would be the right word there, not necessarily infamous, but I digress. Doc, how are you this week?
I'm doing good. I'm back to work in a full work week. Last work week, I only worked part of it because I was coming back from a trip where I went up and saw Daniel and some of my girlfriend's family. Played a little bit of Hearthstone, mostly BGs. I am almost 5,400 in BGs right now. Daniel, how about yourself?
I have been playing very, very little standard Hearthstone, which is typically a little odd for me, but this last month I just wasn't super engaged in the meta, and the decks was just a little burned out, and so I played a lot of Battlegrounds. I was also just very busy, didn't have a lot of time to play Hearthstone throughout the month, but this last week I've been getting very much back into Battlegrounds because I want to beat my co-host on Blizzlet's Send Me Your Arms, and I've been climbing up the BG charts, and I am now at 5,800, so climbing up smoothly on that one. That's been blessed. I was so very close to getting spicy pretzel mustard today. I was inches away. I could feel it, I could taste it, and I lost like 30 points in the last round, and I died. So I was so very close, but alas, that achievement still eludes me.
It also eludes me, although I did finally get pretzel mustard about a week ago.
That seems cool. That seems like a cool thing to get.
But I didn't get the spicy. I got just the regular pretzel mustard. Nothing Fripp would sell.
That's true.
Tito, what have you been doing inside Hearthstone?
I had an amazing month. I hit Legend early last month, as we talked about, and I set myself a goal to try to finish above 5,000, which seemed reasonable to me because normally I'd be around 8,000, and I figured that might be a good improvement. Maybe I won't get there, but at least it was something to push for. I had one day where I had such a nice run. I was playing the Shagro Priest, and I ended up getting all the way to top 3,000, and then 2,000, and then 1,000. And I actually peaked at 857-ish, I think somewhere around there. And I finished at 1257. I actually did the camping thing for the last night or two because I was that close. And I got my first 11 stars. And then this month, I've already hit Legend. And I came in at like 157. And I'm currently around 320 or so right now. So it's been a hell of a lot of fun.
That's awesome, dude. Congrats.
Thanks. So, Doc, what about you mentioned a little bit, but what about outside of Hearthstone? You actually went on a trip. Was that before or after our last call?
That was after, or that was before. That was
okay,
before.
Fair enough. But you got a little bit of time at work, and you were sick for a little bit too, weren't you?
Yeah, not feeling super great. But like all's better now. So outside of Hearthstone, boring. Absolutely boring. Have done nothing cool since last week, but it is kind of hard to do something cooler than seeing family compete at nationals and then hanging out with some of your best buds. So,
and checking out the Museum of Clean, the greatest museum in these continental United States.
And it may sound like a fever dream. It is absolutely not, and it's one of the best places. So if, for whatever reason, if you find yourself in Pocatello, Idaho, which may or may not be fictitious, Museum of Clean is definitely a place you want to stop at. Tito, what have you been doing? Or Daniel, sorry, what have you been doing outside of Hearthstone?
Oh, I've been playing a lot of role-playing games. I have a number of campaigns that are kind of wrapping up, and so finishing those, and I had a bunch of one-shots and all sorts of other jazz, and so that's been a blast. I'm tentative to say this because I'm only 5% sure that this might ever happen at any point, but I am dipping my toe into seeing how much extra work doing an actual play podcast would be, of a couple of friends of mine playing various role-playing games, and so we're doing a test session in 2 weeks, and I'll be editing that and putting that out for my patrons over at Blizzlet, and seeing how it goes, seeing if I like doing an actual play, because I don't have enough podcasts, and I would like, apparently, I'm a madman who wants a third flippin' podcast. But other than that, it's been good.
So you're going after Hat's crown.
No sane person ever should. Hat does too much work for any singular human being, and yet he keeps on doing more, and it's amazing. So I'm not going after his crown because I'm not doing another Hearthstone podcast, but I'll dip my toe in maybe a small other project.
Any details? I know it's not you're coming. Is there any kind of world building you can give our audience to wet their whistle, or is?
I can give you the one shot. So I have no idea what the long-term campaign would be, but the one shot is based around a cyberpunk setting using a system called Blades in the Dark. And so they're all kind of assassins or thieves or criminals in one way, shape, or form. And to give you the tone of the game is typically pretty serious, but that's not the kind of games that I like to play, so we're not doing a gritty, serious game. They, in their first mission, had to steal a briefcase in the net during essentially a wrestling competition, as one of them attempted to compete in what was their version of the Royal Rumble, while the others tried to get underneath the stage itself to try and steal this box. And there ended up being a wedding proposal in the middle of the Royal Rumble to distract everybody, and it was a delightful, silly time.
Did they find the kendo sticks under the mat?
You know, they didn't, but they did find a series of mouse traps underneath the ring, and they had to climb through those in order to get to the mysterious box underneath.
One final question. Since this is going to be a Blizzlet patron exclusive to begin, can I assume that it is not for the young?
Almost always. Almost always, that is the case.
Okay, fair.
Tito, what have you been doing outside of Hearthstone?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Last couple days have been a little harrowing. My wife's been sick, and actually, as we record this right now, she is currently in the emergency room, so I figured, what better way to pass the time than to talk to some friends about Hearthstone? But we're hoping that things are going to be fine. I just got a message from her a little while ago, and they're running some tests now, but we'll see how it goes. Outside of that, I'm starting to get my editing on. The last episode of Bread and Butter, I actually did the editing. Doc normally does the editing. I might do this one too. We'll see. I'm planning on it anyway. So that's been a lot of fun. I used my coaching session from Coin Concede, and if you are not a patron of Coin Concede at the $10 level and getting a free coaching, you're doing yourself a disservice. Because I know I just said $10 and free, but you are getting insane value from that. I actually just had Hat help me to learn how to edit podcasts, and it was fantastic. And then since I started doing that, what I usually do is I step it up to the next level. And so now I am starting to work on my video editing skills. And I took the gaffe that we had a couple weeks ago with Dragon Rider when I accidentally called one podcaster by the wrong name. And I took that clip and I made a little video out of it. And that was a lot of fun. And I have a lot more projects coming up and things to do. So that's been pretty exciting. But we'll see how it goes. Doc, I think though, if someone's listening to Bread and Butter and you don't know Daniel Stormraige Sheldon, I don't know. Well, first of all, you've probably not understood several jokes that have been made over the course of the last 18 episodes or so. But I don't know how you found us, but it's normally we find people from like Coin Concede, and then we work over to Squelch and Blizzlet, and it kind of goes that way. Usually, I think we trickle down from places like Blizzlet. So, Daniel, I think Doc's going to give you a little interview if you're okay with that.
All right.
Yeah. So, Daniel.
Yes.
How'd you get started in gaming?
I got started in gaming from a very young age. I was kind of drawn to games pretty naturally. I remember playing specifically Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 1 was a game that I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I played a lot of educational games very early on. I played a game called Spy Fox, which was a delight and a half back on the PC many, many moons ago. But what really solidified it was I had a cousin who babysat me during the summer, and the way that he would babysit me is he would play StarCraft, and I would just watch him. I would just watch him play StarCraft for hours on end. And I was 7 or 8 maybe at the time, and I enjoyed it so much that I was just like, this is the best thing ever. This is amazing. This is just the coolest thing ever. And ever since then, I just was drawn into all sorts of different games, and I think video games as a medium are just absolutely phenomenal, and the way that they're able to tell stories and interact with you as a player is it's difficult to describe how it impacts you, but it's phenomenal, and as a result I've been very drawn to games ever since.
Wonderful. Sounds like a fantastic cousin.
Yeah,
this
I
one's
would say so.
Gonna be a twofer.
Yeah.
So how'd you find your way into Hearthstone? And then what led you to getting onto 2 Hearthstone podcasts?
So I was originally a big World of Warcraft player, and when I say big, I don't mean good. I've literally never, ever once in my life done endgame content for WoW. I just level alts, but I love it so much, and so I'll just keep leveling and doing quests, and then I'll restart and level and do quests. But I love the World of Warcraft so much that when they came out with Hearthstone, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And I played it for a little bit, but I bounced off of it, and then in grad school, I got really into Magic the Gathering for a brief while playing Draft. And I was like, I really like this, but I don't like the fact that I have to pay so much money for it all the time. And I don't like the fact that I have to basically wait like once a month when we can get enough people together to do it. And I remembered, oh yeah, Hearthstone. And so I started playing Hearthstone, and I was really, really bad at it when I first started. And I just kept playing again and again and again. And then eventually I took a class where you had to create a podcast in it. And fun fact, I now teach that class. And I was like, well, I kind of know Hearthstone a little bit. I'll do that. And so ever since then, I've been playing Hearthstone nonstop, which led to the creation of Blizzlet originally, which back in the day had a very different tagline, which is supposed to be very focused on esports. The original tagline was the hottest and freshest takes in Blizzard esports. Now we haven't touched esports in, I think, 7 years. So it's changed a bit. And I love both the podcasts that I'm on. Blizzlet holds a special place in my heart because I started it, and it's very adult humor focused, and I like that. I like the way that it flows. But I was a guest on Squelch a number of years ago, or a couple years ago at this point, and afterwards I was like, oh man, I feel like I really meshed with these guys really well. I really enjoyed hanging out with them. It was an absolute blast. So I messaged them later, and I was like, hey, if you guys are ever down a host, let me know. I'd be happy to fill in literally any time. And I didn't hear back for a couple days. And then after probably about 4 or 5 days, Dano texted me, and they were like, all right, so you're on as a new host. And I was like, wait, what? That's what? Huh? Oh, okay. And ever since then, I've been a host on Squelch, and it's been amazing. I love Squelch. It's a very different vibe than Blizzlet, even though both are kind of Hearthstone adjacent podcasts. But I think that they're both very fun in their own unique ways.
And I think we learned something in that description there, is that you really stopped covering esports about 7 years ago, and now esports in Hearthstone is mostly dead. So we can blame Daniel Stormraige Sheldon for the death of Hearthstone esports.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right.
Yeah, the correlation tracks.
Yep.
So Daniel, you're a bit of a rapper now. Do you want to get into that?
I don't rap. Let me be very clear. I wrote a rap because I made a mistake, and that's about it. It's currently on the Blizzlet YouTube page, and I tweeted it out, and it's a little rap that I made celebrating the Festival of Legends, and it was fun. It was exhausting. I have very little plans to ever do it ever again. But it was an enjoyable little time.
Wonderful. I enjoyed it a lot, and I listened to it normal speed, 1.5 times speed, and 2 times speed.
I imagine that it's a lot more impressive if you listen to it at 2 times speed.
It's very good, and I think you were very clever with how you wrote it. So good job.
Oh,
my guy.
thank you.
Yeah,
you're
I will
welcome.
say that I also enjoyed it quite a bit, and I was very impressed. I thought you were kind of gonna go the basic kind of Fresh Prince style of, now this is a story all about, but you really took it a few different places, and I was very impressed. Well done.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun with it, and it took. I wrote the lyrics pretty quickly, and I was like, oh sweet, this is easy. And then I added a beat, and I was like, oh, this is easy. And then I had to sing the words to the beat, and I went, oh, this is a nightmare. And I spent, no joke, just 6 hours just going over the stupid rap to that beat in various ways, cutting, adjusting, and I was like, this sucks. It shouldn't be this hard. And it was. And it took me 3 more days before I eventually settled on one that that I found acceptable. Not good. There's still clear moments where I'm off the beat, but acceptable.
Yeah, it was great, dude. Like, I'm sorry it was so much extra work, but I think the community at large is better that piece of content exists. So,
oh, well, thank you.
Congratulations, Blizzlet made it onto the creator program. How is your experience since then with having access to that stuff? I mean, don't say anything that you can't say, but
yeah, I'd let you know if I had anything yet. We've, as of right now, we've been accepted. We've set off our information,
Okay.
and we're waiting so we could sign an NDA. And then I imagine once we sign that, then we'll get all the information. But I'm very excited at it, but also I'm very nervous because Blizzlet is like, I feel like the unwanted friend at a party of just like, oh no, there's like so many cool popular kids here. I don't belong. And so it's very weird to kind of be in the same breath as like Ridiculous Hat and Blister Guy and Wicked Good and people of that caliber. To be in the same program is wild and unhinged at times.
And I think you do yourself a disservice, though, Daniel, because, like, for people like me and Doc, like, you're not Ridiculous Hat, but you're adjacent. You are an essential part of the content that we consume. And you are ever present in a lot of things that I'm involved in. So to hear you say, well, I don't belong here, that's bullshit. You very much belong here. So stop being self-deprecating. Accept the fact that you are actually a content creator. You deserve to be where you're at. Not because it was given to you, but because you took it and you earned it.
Well, thank you very much. I won't stop being self-deprecating. That's the one thing that I know that I will continue to do. But I will accept the compliment, and I will at least pause for this moment and
you're welcome, my guy.
Thank you very much.
Now, are you possibly doing the theory crafting this week?
It's a great question. I don't think so. There was a hint that maybe possibly that I would get access, but I don't think it's going to get through their legal department in time. So fingers crossed on a future one. And again, I don't think that I'll get the same access that streamers do or anything along those lines, but fingers crossed that in future times I might get a little bit more access because I love theory crafting stuff.
And what I understand is there's 2 different levels there. You can either be the streamer or you can be the press. And the press, they're not streaming, but they can play and they can theory craft decks and they use it to write their articles and blah blah blah. And you can do both. So
yeah, I would definitely fit under the press category rather than a streamer category based on my followers, right? So I think that would be the route I would go, and I'd love to be able to write about it for Blizz Pro and give some examples of like day 1 decks. And I'll probably do that anyway, just because I like that concept and I like building those kind of decks and writing that style of article. But we'll see if I end up getting any sort of access or anything along those lines. Fingers crossed.
Now, are you going to write an article about just generally good decks, or are you going to tell us how the Totem Shaman will be the meta breaker?
Oh, Totem Shaman is the meta breaker. I'm glad you brought it up because I'm actually just going to write 3 different articles that are just various versions of Totem Shaman and how it's the best deck in the meta.
That might be an eyesore, but we'll enjoy it anyway.
Great.
So Daniel, you are a teacher and you are an actor. Which one do you enjoy more?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Actor is tough because I rarely get paid for any of the work that I do. Most of the work that I do is just community theater stuff, which is just volunteer, and I love it a lot. Same with the improv comedy that I do around town. So I would say that most of the time I really enjoy acting, and that's probably my main passion. But it's also not something that I have to do for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, so and so. And I really like teaching, and I think the opportunities that I get with regards to teaching have been really, really fun, and being able to interact with students and find those moments where something clicks and they go, oh, I get it. Like, those are so very fun. And I remember last semester or semester and a half ago, I had a student who left a pretty glowing review that talked about how I had changed her direction, what she wanted to do with her career. And I was like, that's fantastic. I'm very excited about that. So any time that I can kind of help guide younger students or students at all, I am very, very grateful. And so I think that while I love acting, I'm glad that it is not my job. I tried to have it be my job when I lived in LA, and it was miserable. So I think that as a job, I prefer teaching.
Have you thought about combining the two? And I know right now you're teaching podcasting and that sort of thing, but why not teach acting?
I actually am teaching next semester an improv class, but this is nobody cares about the academic side of it. But I don't have my doctorate, so I can't teach. I don't have a terminal degree in theater, so I can't teach most theater classes for our department. And so instead, I have a comm degree, and it's not a terminal degree, but I can be hired on as a lecturer, and that's what my current position is. So I can't teach full-time for the theater department because of my degree, essentially.
So the burning question that literally anyone who knows you asks, what's up with cats?
Yeah. This is the greatest movie of all time, and I don't think that there's really any other explanation that is necessary to it. I think that the art, the vision, the animation are all things that will leave you speechless, and there's so much to think about when it comes to cats. Like, why? Why? And how? And who? And these are all important questions that I have pondered over my, I would say, 20 viewings of Cats at this point. And I don't have any answers. And I think any sort of film that leaves you with questions so that way you can't continue to you just don't know things, right? You're still wondering, what is the meaning behind this? I think those are really classic films.
That is fair. And I know personally, I have watched Cats with You 1 1/8 times.
Yeah, you did fall asleep during our most recent one, which I tried to not take personally. And if that was your first time watching Cats, I would have just kept poking you, waking you up. But on the second watch, I get it. Sometimes it's late, and those cats are just, they lull you into a sense of security. You feel safe with those cats, and as a result, you just snooze
like
a little
hits you
bit.
right in the chest, and it just puts you right under.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what is a Jellicle cat if not a sleepy cat? And that's something to keep in mind.
I believe Tito has some stuff for us all to go over.
Yes, so it is time for the new expansion, and I think that we have all listened to many podcasts that have talked about the new expansion, and they're telling you about the cards and the core set and what's leaving, what's coming, what's not a good card, what's a good card. But I think it's time, especially given the fact that it's March Madness season. I know it's April, but they're playing the championship game tonight, I believe. Is that why don't we do a little March Madness style about find out which the best class is in Hearthstone for the festival? So we seeded the brackets based on some information, what people thought were the best classes and the worst classes. Now doing there are 11 classes, so doing an 11 team bracket is a little difficult, so there are some buys here. So I'll give you the brief rundown of the ranking of the classes. And so this is all just kind of community thoughts on where these classes will end up. So Death Knight is leading us off in the number 1 seed. We get Rogue in the number 2 seed. We got Paladin, Dancing in the Disco, 3rd seed. We got Warlock in 4, Priest in 5, Demon Hunter in 6, Druid in 7, Hunter in 8, Mage in 9, Shaman in 10, and of course, bringing up the rear, Warrior in 11. So, the rules here are pretty simple. We're going to evaluate the matchups. They've all been matched up. And winner moves on to the next round. And this is how we're going to crown the champion. Now, you might say, how are we going to classify these? How are we going to decide what our criteria is for picking the winner of each bracket? The rule is there are no rules. So if you feel that it's got a very strong core set, you can base it on that. If you think that the art is very impressive, you can base it on that. If you think that you just hate a class and they're not going to win regardless, you can do it on that. It doesn't matter. It's all just in some fun. And there's 3 of us, so it's someone's going to win, and we're going to move on and go on to the next round. So anybody have any questions before we begin?
Nah, I am so ready.
Okay. Let's start off with the 9-8 seed. That is Mage versus Hunter. Stormraige, why don't you lead us off? Who's going to win this matchup?
My gut instinct here is Mage, because Hunter, now, you've got the wild card, 'cause Hunter has Banjosaur, and Banjosaur is tempting to take above any other class, and I get that. That is indeed very exciting. Mage, on the other hand, has Light Show, and Light Show might be my favorite card in the entire expansion. As a brief reminder, that is 3 mana, shoot 2 beams at enemies that deal 2 damage, shoot 1 more for each Light Show you've cast this game. It is the exact kind of card that I will play far after it is no longer meta. So you've got Light Show, you've also got Rewind, and I like that combination. You've got Infinitize the Maxitude, which is just an obscene amount of value. And Keyboard Soloist, I think, is a genuinely strong card of adding that +2 spell damage on turn 4. So my thoughts here are Mage.
So I just got a text from my wife that she needs to be picked up. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to let you guys finish the podcast. I am going to give my seedings, my victories to every seeding. So then you guys just have to look at chat, and you will be able to find out what my pick is. So you guys continue on with this. I'm sorry I have to get going. Have a great rest of your show.
Yeah, you're good, my guy.
We'll talk to you after.
Okay.
Yeah. So my
Doc,
heart.
where are you at?
My heart tells me Hunter, because I love dinosaurs. Yeah.
You're a Stranglethorn heart?
Because I love dinosaurs, and I think New Mukla is going to be fun. And the signature art for the New Mukla is absolutely amazing. I think all the new signature art that got revealed today has looked very good. But on a competitive and more viable level, my brain tells me that Mage is the easiest answer to say yes. This is going to have the better deck when the expansion comes out.
So it feels like Mage is the winner.
That is
here.
correct.
Is that what we've decided? I mean, we have to wait for, at the very least, it's 2 to, so it doesn't matter what Tito's vote is. It's 2 to 1 at the very least. Okay, fantastic. Do we, so
Hooray!
Mage wins round 1. Where's the bumper of the hooray?
Exactly. Patent pending Dano.
I think patent pending Hearthstone on that one, friend.
That was definitely Dano's idea, 100%.
Okay.
Because they know how much Dano would have liked that.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
They asked Dano if they could do it, and he said yes.
Yeah. That makes sense. I believe it. All right, Doc. Do you want to lead the next? Do you want to lead through this discussion? I instinctually want to go. It's hosting time, but it's not my podcast.
So the next match that we have up is the 11 and 6 seed between Warrior and Demon Hunter. they're pushing Rush Demon Hunter right now, right, with the new core set and everything and all the new cards we've seen. But for the meme, my heart is telling me Taunt Warrior.
Here's the thing. You're wrong. But that's not the important thing. That's not the important thing. I love that your heart's going there. I trust your heart. Your heart will go on. Your heart will live on. It's beautiful and wonderful, and I love it. If Warrior were up against literally any other class, I'd be so down for the memes. I'd be down to take Warrior all the way to the 1 seed. But it's against Demon Hunter. And Demon Hunter holds such a very special place in my heart because it's emo sad boy time. And it doesn't matter a single card that Demon Hunter has. It's emo sad boy time.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for emo sad boy time. That, and it has a very fun mechanic. I really like Rush. I think that as a mechanic, as a swarming tool, I think is really, really fun. I like that they're leaning into that as Demon Hunter's identity. So, big fan of all the cards that it gets. And I have come around on Warrior. I will say this. I don't think that Warrior is as bad as everybody says it is. Not because of Warrior cards. Warrior cards are admittedly pretty bad by and large. But there are a lot of neutral cards that have a lot of different tribal types that are really, really strong. So while I think the Warrior package is not great, the neutrals are good enough that you might be able to get by with it, with things like Roaring Applause, with things like Power Slider. And so I think that Warrior can live with just a couple of Warrior cards in their deck playing a Menagerie build. And I think that'll be at least fine.
Okay, so Warrior has a decent package, but not a great package like Demon Hunter.
That is correct. That is my hypothesis here.
So it looks like I'm outvoted 2-1. Because Tito did in fact vote for Demon Hunter before he had to leave.
Oh, fantastic. Where did he leave that?
So if you might see a chat bubble like next to our faces with the number 7 next to it, up in the right-hand corner.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Great. So we have Demon Hunter. Moving on. Fantastic. Good work, Demon Hunter. Warrior, I'm so sorry. If it were anybody else, I would have gone for the memes. That's just unlucky seeding.
So 7 and 10 seed. So Druid and Shaman.
Yeah.
Okay. So recently I've been a Druid guy. And like I tried Shaman this last meta when it was broken and I couldn't get it to do the broken thing for me. But with what's coming out, I just think Druid's, like, it might not be great, but I think the new kind of Druid that they're going for will be a lot of fun. So I'm going to go for a Druid here.
I want to give Shaman its praise, which is it did get the worst music and still manages to not be horrible. So that, I think, is important. It's still alive, despite the fact that it had to deal with jazz. And nobody wants to deal with jazz, and that's just a fact of life. But it's still bad. It's still not great. And while Jive Insect, I think, is very fun, most of the Shaman cards I don't think are great. And Druid has Groovy Cat. Groovy Cat is amazing. Yes. That card on its own would lift it, not because of its ability, which is, I think, pretty good. I mean, it turns your hero power into a 2-mana deal 3 damage, which is all right. But just the art of Groovy Cat. It's the grooviest cat you ever did see.
It sure is. Now, compared to Mr. Mistopheles.
Nobody. Okay, now we're getting into dangerous territory because nobody's as groovy as Mr. Mistopheles. He's magical.
That's a fair point, Daniel. So
I believe, regardless of Tito's vote, which was Shaman, that Druid moves along.
Let's go, Druid. So then that brings us to Death Knight's first actual match after its bye versus Mage.
Yes.
I'm just pure power level. I'm going to have to go with Death Knight. It's going to be really rough for anything to kind of compete with the consistency that Death Knight's going to be able to pull with them not losing anything with rotation.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think, because, like, their Festival of Legends cards, I think, are average in power level. Like, I think that there are a couple standouts. I think Cagehead is phenomenal. I love that card, and I will find decks that play that card no matter what it takes. But I think the fact that they don't lose anything is really hard to ignore. Like, every other class is half of their cards, and Death Knight goes, nah! You know how I was still meta before you left? Guess what? Still meta!
Yeah.
So I am down with some Climatic Necrotic Explosion and Cagehead myself.
Wonderful. And it looks like Tito is too.
That is the first sweep, I believe.
It's the first unanimous 3-0. So our next match is 5 and 4 seed, Priest and Warlock.
Yep.
I'm just, based off of flavor alone, I'm going to have to go Warlock. And that's a lot coming from me personally, because Warlock is one of my least favorite classes in the game.
I hate Priest. This is not something that has been a hidden aspect of me, especially Control Priest. And this expansion is heavy Control Priest. They may have left in the Shadow Priest cards, but they didn't add to it even a little bit. So anything that I can do to kick Priest while it's down and make sure that it stays down, I'm going to do so. So I'm also voting for Warlock here, which, to its credit, I think is really fun. I think that the legendaries that they got, Symphony of Sins is genuinely a very strong card. I think Rin, Orchestrator of Doom, is just very fun. And I'm sure that there's a way to play that in a really dumb way. I think Void Virtuoso is an absolute delight. And I think that the way that they're handling Fatigue, I think, is very good. So I'm pretty all in on Warlock this expansion. I think it's gonna be great.
And so that's 2-1, because Tito, much to our dismay, voted for Priest.
I appreciate that Tito voted for me on Warrior versus Demon Hunter. I think that's the only one that he has won outside of the all voting for Death Knights. So I'm curious to see how that one continues on.
So next match is 3 seed versus the 6 seed, Paladin versus Demon Hunter. I'm gonna have to go Demon Hunter. Like, I love Paladin. It's a class that will always have a special place in my heart for containing the first legendary I've ever had to craft when I started playing Hearthstone. I just think Demon Hunter is going to be doing Demon Hunter things and just being a little too strong for what it is.
I hate disco. There are two genres of music that I do not like, and it is disco and jazz. So I'm all in on eliminating those two genres just as quickly as physically possible. And it's not that the flavor's bad. Flavor's great. I love Paladin as disco. I think that the cards are very delightful. I just don't think disco should be heard by human ears anymore, and as a result, I'd like to get it out. I will also say that Paladin, while it has some fun cards, they're not the kind of cards I like to play. They are so very control, and I am going to hate a Noyo Troop.
Yeah.
More than any card in Hearthstone out of this expansion. I am just going to get so very frustrated. You put that and throw a Ziliax on it, and I'm just going to concede that game.
Yep, that's because we're both mid-rangey aggro boys, right?
This is correct, yes. So, I think Demon Hunter isn't going down swinging just yet. I think it's moving on.
I think so too, and poor Tito voted for Pally.
Poor Tito, not here to defend his picks and losing every single one.
So that brings us to Druid versus Rogue, the 7 seed versus the 2 seed. I think Rogue is fun, but I very much hate losing to Rogue. It is the second most painful class for me to lose to. So out of pure spite and nothing else, I am voting for Druid.
I think it's very interesting. Tito has gone with Rogue here, so I am the deciding factor. Now, Druid, we've talked about this. I love Groovy Cat. I love Groovy Cat. Rogue, it's got Bounce Around featuring Corona. And I think that card on its own is very, 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 very fun. And there are some cards with Rogue that I just think are a delight and a half. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I was talking about kind of some mage cards, or specifically Demon Hunter, I think is what it was. But to me, this expansion feels like Rogue for Rogue, which is very heady. But Rogue, to me, at its core, is playing a bunch of cards, bouncing them back and forth, playing even more cards, and doing cool things with them that have like very high burst potential with Rogue. And all of these cards lend themselves to that, whether it's Beatboxer, which is combo deal 4 damage randomly among all enemies. Bounce Around, everything gets back to your hand. How does 1 mana Astalor sound? Seems pretty good to me, if I was to say. And now Brand's gone, so you can't do that obscene combo, which would feel pretty gross. But there's just a lot of fun things that you can do with Rogue, and so I'm a big fan of it. Which is why, even though I love Groovy Cat, even though I love Drum Circle, even though I love Timber Tambourine, I'm gonna go with Rogue here. I'm rooting for Rogue.
So that is my first L of the bracket. That leads us back up to the top of the bracket of Death Knight versus Warlock. Flavor wise, I would say it's close. It's really close. I like the flavor of Warlock just a little bit more than I like the flavor of Death Knight. I do think heavy metal is amazing, and I'm glad that it's a represented genre of music here. But I just think Death Knight is it's just going to be good. It's good now, and they're only gaining cards. So
I think from a pure power level, you're probably right. But Warlock went in a very new direction.
Really did.
And they've never done Fatigue quite this way before. They've kind of hinted at it. They've done other cards like Agony that put Fatigue into your opponent's deck. They've done things of like when you run out of cards, you get this effect. So there are similar things, but this specific is so unique. And my mind is running with Jailer plus whatever plus Void Virtuoso, and you're just immune from your own fatigue damage. And there's so many, I think, cool combos that can be happening from it that I'm very stoked. Now the problem we've run into is that all of Tito's votes have now died. So we no longer have Tito's votes to run by.
I will say with this one, I actually forgot about Warlock's new gimmick. And I like that so much more.
So are you changing your vote?
I'm changing my vote. I had my ballot filled out. I tossed it into the shredder, and I've put in a new one.
Yeah. Love to see it.
So Warlock making it to the championships. Next would be Demon Hunter versus Rogue.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me talk out my thought process here. Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter is my favorite flavor of any set. Not necessarily mechanics of any set, but favorite flavor. I have waited so long for emo to be represented in Hearthstone, and there's no better class in the world than to represent it than Demon Hunter. It is phenomenal. From a flavor perspective, an absolute win. The fact that they were just like, you know what? We're not gonna code it. It's going down swinging. One of the most famous emo songs of all time. Shout out to Fall Out Boy. And every aspect about it is great, whether it's Instrument Smasher, whether it is Rush the Stage, Security, whether it's Taste of Chaos with the way that the art is drawn. Every aspect about it is just phenomenal. On the other hand, we've got Rogue. And Rogue has, I think, some of the best cards that I've ever seen as far as like fun to play. MC Blaintron, I think, is such a fun design. The ability to give yourself a small weapon, but more importantly, give your opponent a cursed blade is wild, and where Rogue lives on doing ping damage here and there. And I mentioned that they do a lot of burst damage, but that burst damage often comes in just frequent small bursts in a single turn. And so we add this plus Ghastly Strike, and all of a sudden you're pinging for 2, and that's significant upgrades. And so I love the design of that card. I love Breakdance, return a friendly minion to your hand, summon a dancer with its stats in Rush. I think that is one of my favorite cards that they've ever printed for Rogue. I think that's such an iconic class style card. And I don't know my answer still. I talked it out and I still don't know what I want.
I put all my dice in the living room because I was going to roll for it. As you do. But I think flavor wise, Rogue for me. As much as I hate to vote for one of the classes I absolutely hate losing to.
Yeah, I do like how you did vote for Druid in the last one as an anti-rogue, and now you're like, oh, but wait a second, maybe my mind has changed.
Yeah, life's all about changes, man.
That's a good point, and sometimes when you learn information, you should adapt and reach a new conclusion. I think my end vote is gonna be Demon Hunter. Because I'm gonna go down swinging if I need to. And I think, do you have a dice nearby, Doc?
Yeah, it'll take me just like 10 seconds.
Okay, while Doc is going to get a dice, I will attempt to vamp. I want to mention just how much I love so many aspects about the Demon Hunter cards. And in case you've never known, some of my favorite flavor text of Demon Hunter is how Vera Darkraven is, you know someone's cool when their name sounds like a font. An absolute delight. An absolute delight.
That is very good.
How going down swinging flavor text is how Vera was outcast from Gilneas for being too edgy, which she sees as an achievement. What a beautiful emo. What a beautiful, lovely emo.
It's very good.
Doc, you have returned.
Okay, so do you want Rogue to be evens or odds?
Demon Hunter are the odd man out. They should be odd.
Okay. I'm rolling a d20 for the listeners.
Yep.
Nat 1.
That is a nat 1. That is the perfect way the Demon Hunter gets to the championship, baby. Let's go!
Okay, so that means the championship is Death Knight versus Demon Hunter.
I believe it is Warlock versus Demon Hunter.
That's right, because I changed my vote. Yeah, that
is
correct.
Delightful. This is a tough one. This is just a saltwater toughie. Demon Hunter has made an incredible run. Going from a play-in spot all the way to the championship, you love to see it. You love to see that storyline.
Yes, you do. They've put in a lot of work, Daniel.
Yeah.
And they trained really hard. They had to hold so much sadness in their hearts and their minds. Where Warlock, they were one of the favorites. They didn't have to work that hard. They got a free pass in the first round compared to most of the other classes.
Yep.
But they do a fun thing. But
they do a fun thing.
The sad, edgy boys and gals, my heart rests with Demon Hunter.
I feel like this is as tough a choice as the decision of Solomon in the Bible of what do I do? Do I chop this baby in half? Do I give it to one? What do I do, Doc? What do I do? I love this baby. But Warlock is such a fun mechanic. Fatigue is delightful, and I think Fatigue is going to be a very strong deck. I think that there's going to be some combos that are going to be just very, very fun to play.
You're right.
But you know what? At the end of the day, Demon Hunter got here by rolling a nat 1. There's nothing more perfect than that. You gotta love the story. Demon Hunter rising to the top. I'm going with Demon Hunter. Tito also votes with Demon Hunter, and that is a perfect 3-0 sweep for Demon Hunter to take it all.
Let's go. Emos for life, baby. Mom, it was not a phase.
Boy, howdy, you love to say it. Let's panic, and now we can disco.
So, Daniel, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for participating in this lovely bracket that Tito had made for us. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
You can follow me. I'm at Stormraige23, Rage spelled Raige on Twitter. It's also my Twitch, twitch.tv/Stormraige23. If you want to follow one of my podcasts, you can follow Blizzlet at Blizzlet on Twitter, or at Squelchcast is the other podcast that I am on. Both are delights and are available in your podcatcher if you just look for them, Blizzlet Hearthstone or Squelch, another Hearthstone podcast.
Wonderful. For myself, you can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Doc McButt and here at Bread and Butter. If you want to email the show, you can email the show at breadandbutterhs@gmail.com. Daniel, do you have anyone you want to shout out tonight?
I want to give a shout out to Alkali Lake for forcing me to do a rap, because I was so very confident that tweet would not reach 100 likes. And then she was like, oh, haha, that's cute. And made me do it. And so while it's probably something that I won't do again, to my knowledge, unless like the video blows up, and then maybe, who's to say, if it gets 100 views, then maybe I'll consider doing another one. But that doesn't seem to be likely. So shout out to Alkali Lake for helping promote different types of content within the Hearthstone creation space.
Awesome. And myself, Daniel, want to thank you for being on the show. It's been fun, and like you're one of my best buds. So getting you on here was an eventuality.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it happened now. Kind of sorry that it took so long. But I'm glad it happened when it did, because we got to talk about your rap and touch on some fun stuff, and it happened got to see you after a long time of not seeing you. And yeah, I think that's it, everyone. I think we're toast.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast. I really appreciate
You're welcome,
it.
Daniel. It was so much fun. All right.
Goodbye.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.